So this video I'm making today is not my normal content. I never would have expected to be sitting here making a video like this, but I feel like doing this could really help me with my healing process during this time. This has been undoubtedly like the worst week of my life. Just, there's no question, this has been the worst week of my life. And I hope by doing this, not only does it help me heal, but anyone who might see it, it could help them potentially. Anyone who owns pets eventually goes through something like this. I just didn't think for me that it would be so soon. So anyone who's been subscribed to me or watched my videos for the last few years would have noticed my cat making an appearance in some of these videos. The way that my cat was, he was just a huge mama's boy. He wanted to be anywhere that I was, didn't matter what I was doing, and that included, you know, making videos, and there would be times where he could come and chill in the room, and then there'd be times where he just had the zoomies and I had to get him out and have him chill in another room until I was done. But he has made some appearances here and there throughout my videos, and I just wanted to come on here and talk about him a little bit. He was never a huge part of my channel, but he was a huge part of my life. So I want to talk a bit about him and the time I spent with him and what happened to him. And I also want to preface this by saying that this is really difficult for me to talk about, and if I do start crying, I'm gonna cut it, I'm gonna compose myself, and I'm gonna come back. I don't want to be sobbing on camera because I don't know. I just think that would be a little difficult for me to edit and difficult for people to watch. So I think I'm gonna start at the beginning of his life and talk a little bit about him and how I came to know him and love him. So there was a period of time in my life where I lived in Midland, Texas with my ex-boyfriend, and we had gotten our own apartment because he had gotten a new job, and we had the money and we had the space, so I really begged him, you know, can we please get a cat? I've always wanted a cat, my own cat. You know, as an adult, I wanted to get my first pet, and I'd always just really, really wanted a cat. And eventually he did agree that we could get a cat, and I had been looking online and seeing what kind of babies were available for adoption, and eventually we found him. We found my beanie boy, and so we decided to go visit him. And it's really funny because when I was looking for a cat, I had a couple things in mind for what I wanted. I wanted a girl, I wanted a little girl, and preferably I wanted a black cat. And the one that we ended up going to see was a white cat, and he was a boy. So essentially the exact opposite of kind of what I had in mind for what I wanted. And even though he wasn't exactly what I had in mind, I am so glad that he's the one that we ended up adopting. He just had the best little personality I could have ever hoped for. And I used to say it when he was still alive, and I say it now. He was everything I could have ever wanted in a cat. He was sweet, he was affectionate, he liked to play. He would play fetch. I would throw his toy and he'd go run around with it and then bring it back and plop it right back down in front of me and be like, all right, throw it some more. He had always been really scared of strangers and people he didn't know, but he had a really, really deep attachment to me, because for the first few months that we had him, I was primarily the one that was around him. My ex-boyfriend worked like 14-hour days every day, and I was kind of stay at home. He was making enough money to where I could stay at home and just kind of take care of the apartment and be with the cat. So he developed a really deep attachment to me, and that never went away even after we moved back to where I'm living now. Not this apartment, but this state. He always had a really big attachment to me. He followed me everywhere. It didn't matter. Like, we could be, lounging on the bed while I'm watching TV, and then I get up to go to the bathroom. He follows me. He waits outside the door, and he waits for me to come out, and then he follows me back to the room. That's just how he was. When we got him, he was 4 months old, and he had been found in a parking lot, and the person that found him like kind of half submerged in a puddle in the parking lot. And they thought that he was dead because he was just like unresponsive. He had been like halfway underwater. So if I had to guess, I don't know all the details, obviously. I just kind of know how he was found. I would assume they took him to an animal hospital and they got him back on his feet. And then from there, he went to the shelter that I adopted him from. And I remember when we went to go meet him and visit him and see if, he'd be a good match. The employee at the shelter was really excited that we were there to see him, because she said that a lot of people had come to see him in particular and no one wanted to adopt him because they said he was too shy. And I was like, okay, yeah, we'll see about that. And I always thought that that's such a silly thing to say about a cat. I mean, a lot of cats are shy. They're going to be shy around you until they get to know you. But I thought that he was really sweet, and eventually he did kind of warm up to us a little more the longer we stayed in there. I guess it was kind of like the cat room, visiting him, and the lady let out all the other cats so we could kind of see how he interacts with the other animals. And long story short, we ended up adopting him. So fast forward to the future a little bit. Me and my ex end up splitting up. I don't want to go into details about that because it's not worth rehashing all of that bullshit. But he did let me take Beanie. He let me take Beanie because I was going to be moving out and moving in with some roommates, and that's kind of where I am right now. Beanie did really well here. He adjusted pretty quick. I knew it was going to be a big, stressful change for him because, like, naturally, he's just like a nervous, anxious little guy, Big changes were hard for him, but he adjusted here really fast and warmed up to everybody. One of our roommates had another cat, and it was a little rocky getting them used to each other just because they had always been like, only cats, like only children, They'd never really been like living with another animal in one space before, but after a while they were totally fine and had warmed up to each other and coexisted nicely. Sometimes they would like kind of snuggle together or lay together on the bed and just snooze, and he adjusted pretty well here. And I did meet someone else that I ended up falling in love with, who I'm still with, and he was introduced to Beanie immediately, and Bean had warmed up to him a lot faster than I thought he would, because I know how he is with people he doesn't know. He's very, very nervous and scared. He just thinks that, like, oh my God, they're gonna eat me or like something. I don't know what he thought, but he was just very nervous and scared with strangers. But he warmed up to my new partner very quickly, and I think that was because my new partner, just kind of gave him his space and didn't try to approach him or get in his face or anything. He was just very chill, like, If he wants to come up to me, he'll come up to me, and he'll just, let him take his time and do it as he wants to, which I really appreciated, definitely. Because I always hated any situation that would stress my cat out. I didn't want that for him because I know how nervous and scared he could get. But he warmed up to my new partner pretty quickly, and my new partner came to love and adore him the same way that I do. So me and my new partner started living together, and Beanie obviously was a part of that, and we just kind of lived like a little tiny happy family, and Bean was always a part of everyday life. I would wake up, make sure that his food and water were topped off, and then go to work. I would come back home from work, and Beanie would come out of the room and greet me and just be really happy to see me, and he would just want pets and love right away. And then we'd relax together all night, and we'd play with toys and, just all the normal stuff. We've all been living together for about a year, and things have been really nice. Things have been great. Me and my partner decided that we wanted to move out of this complex and get a new apartment. Something that, is a little nicer, a little bit more room, so that the three of us could just have like a new nice space together. And things were going really, really well with that. Everything was in the stages where it was getting finalized, and we were going to be able to, sign the lease and pick up our keys and everything. And we were really excited. I was excited to give Bean a bigger space and, get him some new stuff like a bigger cat tree and just all sorts of things I just wanted to provide for him. And then, I don't even know how to say it. Just the most unexpected and hardest thing I've ever gone through just happened, and it was just like, it was so fast. So a few days ago, on the 5th of June, Beanie had been having some labored breathing. I had noticed it was really shallow and fast, and he had this going on for a couple days before that. So like the 3rd and the 4th, I had noticed this going on, but he wasn't behaving in any other way that would lead me to believe it was something very serious. He was still eating, drinking, playing, coming in, and being social with me and my partner. And I didn't think it would be anything so serious, but on the night of the 5th of June, I was like, you know what? At this point, it's been a couple days and this is still happening. We need to do something for him. And my partner agreed. So we took him to the animal emergency room around 11:30 or so p.m. And I explained to the front desk what I was noticing and what he seemed to be experiencing, what he was going through. And so they put us in a room and they took him back, and a few minutes later the technician from the front desk had came back in the room, and she said, "He's not stable right now. I need you guys to sign this $500 deposit so that I can go back there and start getting him stable." And essentially, the reason why we were signing the $500 deposit was because, they knew that they were gonna have to do certain things to try and get him stable, and it was probably gonna be in the $500 range. So she had us sign it, and of course we were like, yes, like do whatever you need to do. And she said, typically I would collect the $500 right now, but we don't have time for that. So just sign it, and I'm gonna go back there and get started, and we'll come back and we'll let you know what's going on. So we signed it, And we were waiting, and I was starting to get really worried and upset because we didn't know what was going on. And then I don't even know how much time it was later, but the main vet came in, and she said that, yeah, he's experiencing some shallow breathing, and it's very labored, and very, that his heart rate was really high. That I was kind of expecting, because I knew this was going to be really traumatic and stressful for him, just to be thrust into the emergency room with all these people he doesn't know, and they're like, touching him and poking and prodding, trying to get him stable. And she said that she was hoping it was asthma. Best case scenario, it would be asthma. And worst case scenario, it's something like heart failure. She said that she wanted to try and do some more for him. They were gonna do some x-rays, some imaging, to kind of check out his lungs and his heart and everything, and kind of try and see what was going on. And they'd given him an inhaler sort of thing to try and help with his breathing, and they had him in an oxygen kennel. So it's just like a sealed kennel that pumps oxygen in to try and help his breathing, just to give him some help with his breathing. And she said that, if you don't mind waiting, we'd kind of like to take it slowly with him, because he's already so worked up and nervous, and his breathing and his heart rate are crazy. So, we want to take it slow, because cats can just die from working themselves up so much. And she wanted to avoid that. So me and my partner were just like, yes, of course, like, take your time, please. Like, whatever you need to do, we will be here. She came back after a little while, and she showed us the x-ray imaging and everything. And typically on a pet x-ray, I don't know if I can find an example. If I can, I'll put it up here, but if not, I'll explain it. Typically when you're looking at an animal x-ray, you can see the heart kind of in the middle, and then you see the lungs around it. On a healthy animal, the lungs just appear black, because you can just see right through it. But on his x-rays, his lungs were white, so they were very diseased, and it turned out that he had pneumonia. We still don't know how or why he got pneumonia. It was just so unexpected. We still don't understand why that happened to him. He never goes outside. It just is just really strange. And then she said that they were gonna look into his heart a little bit and see maybe if that was the culprit, if that could be the issue here, because he didn't have asthma, he had pneumonia, unfortunately. I wish it had been asthma, because we would have at least been able to deal with that and care for him at home. Well, they were looking into his heart, and there wasn't a cardiologist on site at that time, so well, I was gonna say cardiologist. I think she had used a different term. I don't know. Either way, they were going to get in contact with someone who could shed some light on what might be going on with his heart. And typically that would take until like the next day, but they ordered like, it was called like a stat or something like that. It's all such a blur because I was so stressed out, but they had ordered it to be done immediately. So we would have more information within like the next hour of what was wrong with him. And so, we're waiting, and the doctor came back in the room. She did confirm that he was experiencing heart failure, unfortunately. She gave us two options at the time. She said that we could hospitalize him and potentially, if we were lucky, buy him another 8 months to a year, and that would be it. But eventually he would pass from the heart failure, even if we did buy him a good chunk of time. Either that or we could just put him to sleep. And at this point, me and my partner were freaking out. And the doctor said, you know what, like, I'll give you some time. Go ahead and think about it because, you know, with the hospitalization, it's very expensive and we understand the financial burden that this can put on people, and it's not always doable as much as you want to give them that chance. But, you know, just take some time and think about it, and, you know, I'll come back in a little bit and we'll talk more about it. I was so beside myself, and at this point my partner had started crying because the options were so fucking limited, you know? My partner's crying and I'm like, we can't just, like, we have to try for him. Like, we can't just let him, like, if we can buy him another 8 months to a year, like, we have to try. And he's crying and he's like, yeah, I want more time with him. I want more time with him. So ultimately we decided to hospitalize, which is really hard in itself, knowing that he's going to be there all by himself with these strangers that he doesn't know, even though they're trying to help him and they're taking care of him and trying to make him feel better. He doesn't know that. He doesn't realize that. And that was really hard for me to know that, you know, he's just going to be scared and be like, where's mom? You know, like, where's my mom? Why am I here? This is scary. It's so difficult, especially for a nervous animal. I mean, there's some animals that are super social and love everybody, but even for them, it would probably be very scary. They don't know where they are. They don't know what's going on. Why are you, like, putting shots and whatever and, like, x-raying? Like, what is this x-ray thing? And, like, what is all this, you know? For any animal, I'm sure it's really scary, but for my boy in particular, I just knew, like, oh my God, he's gonna be, like, just so upset. And one of the really difficult parts of this was that in order to hospitalize him, we had to pay about $2,400, which I did not have. And my partner, like, wanting to help him, he paid it for me. He paid this huge deposit to try and help Beanie. And it made me feel like complete shit because as his owner, I should have been more prepared for him. I just didn't think that at 4 years old, he would be experiencing something as serious as heart failure, but I still should have had something ready for him. I just didn't. My partner paid it for me. We were there from midnight till almost 5 in the morning, and before we left, they allowed us to go back to the ICU and see him before we went home for the night. He was in just, like, probably, like, maybe a little bigger than that, just like a little clear tank sitting in there, and it was pumping oxygen in, trying to help him breathe. And we were just crying seeing him in there like that, and he looked so scared and nervous and, like, didn't want to look at anybody. He was just, like, you know, like, just really, really upset and scared, and we're crying, and the technicians are bringing us boxes of tissues, and it was just really awful to have to see him like that. So we went home and we stayed up for a while longer. It was really hard to try and sleep. Eventually my partner did lay down. He said, I'm really tired. And I was like, that's okay. You know, just go to sleep. It's fine. I ended up staying up a lot longer, far beyond the point that the sun had come up. And I maybe slept like 4 hours. And then we were getting update calls from the hospital and everything, just letting us know how he was doing. There were points where he was doing a little better, and then there were points where it was getting worse. And we were told we were allowed to come visit him whenever we want, for as long as we want. Just, yeah, we could come visit him and it was fine. It got to a point though where he looked like he was becoming a little jaundice, and there could potentially be issues with his kidneys and his pancreas, and his red blood cell count, Jesus, had dropped by 6%. The doctor did a way better job at explaining all this to me. It's just such a blur. Being as stressed out as I was, it was like I was trying to retain all this information, and it was just really hard, because all I'm hearing in my head is like, my cat's not doing good. You know, they were gonna do some imaging and see if he was having issues with his pancreas or his kidneys. And she told us that if it's not his pancreas or his kidneys, this could be a very serious thing, because this could mean he's having a reaction to the heart medication we have him on, which he needs to come out of heart failure. And at that point, they had it in an IV in his arm, just going continuously, I believe, into his system. It turned out that he might have been having some issues with those organs, but it wouldn't necessarily explain why he was still continuing to do so badly. So at that point, they took him off the IV for the heart medication and started giving it to him orally. So then, going forward to the night of the 7th of June, we went to go visit him, and at that point he was no longer needing to be in an oxygen kennel. They did move him to a bigger one, so he wasn't in the tiny one that whole time. They did move him to a much larger one, especially for him, because he was a pretty tiny cat. We got to go visit him, and they gave us a private room, and we were able to be with him in there because he wasn't relying on the oxygen. We stayed with him for like an hour and a half. He was so nervous in there, he just didn't know where he was. He ended up, holding himself up in a corner for a little while, and we were just on the floor with him, petting him and talking to him and giving him love and everything. And then a lady came and knocked on the door, and she's like, it's time for his heart medication. And she explained to me how, she was going to be giving it to him orally, and she diluted, because it's like usually a capsule, and you could put that in food typically that they would just eat, not even realize that they just, ate a capsule. You just kind of hide it in their food. He was not eating. So she was like, I have this syringe, and I just opened the capsule and put it in a cup, mixed it with some chicken juice, and put it in the syringe so I can give it to him orally. And he was just really scared of her and didn't want to let her do it, and there was nothing I could really do to help. She did end up getting it into his mouth, and then she went on her way and just confirmed, like, stay as long as you want, just let the front desk know when you're ready to go and we'll come take him. And he spent some time calming down from that experience, and then at that point he came up, because I was laying on the floor with him. Like, I didn't care. I was like, I don't care how dirty this floor might be, I'm gonna lay on this floor with him, because this is like the best visit I've gotten with him since he's been in here, and it had already been 2 days of him in the hospital. He came and he snuggled up against me and just wanted his mom. Just really difficult. And he spent some time laying with me, and then he started walking around a little more and spent some time with my partner, sitting with him. And then he decided that he'd had enough. He was very stressed out, very tired, very worn out, probably, of course. And so he went under one of the chairs in the room and just kind of relaxed there. And we were still kind of giving him some pets and love here and there, just trying not to stress him out too much. And then we decided to go home and let him get some rest, some much needed rest. So we had that visit. It was very nice to be able to have some alone time with him in our own private room, as opposed to being back in the ICU. So that was nice to be able to have that visit with him. But they did kind of tell us, they had told us a couple times during his hospital stay that, if it gets to a certain point, you're going to have to think of humane euthanasia. And the morning of the 8th, so yesterday, it did come to that point where we had to make that decision, because the doctor told us that, you know, even if you had all the money and all the hospitalization in the world, essentially these weren't her words, but to put it in so many words, it's not really going to change it wasn't going to change his future. No matter how long we had him hospitalized, no matter how much money we spent trying to get him better, it just wasn't really going to change anything. So I had to make the hardest decision I've ever made in my whole life. And I decided to let him go. I didn't want him to have to keep suffering like that, and being in such an unfamiliar place with all these sounds and other animals and people that he does not know. I know that the whole ordeal had to be so incredibly stressful for him, and that makes me feel bad enough, the fact that he had to go through that. And ultimately, that's where we had to say goodbye to him. So yesterday, the 8th, I knew that was going to be the day. And I was having a lot of trouble getting out of bed. The previous day, when we had our visit, he was no longer needing to rely on the oxygen, but that morning they had to put him back into the oxygen kennel. So I knew, I was just like, he's not getting any better. And they're right that, you know, even if we had all the money in the world, it's not going to change his outcome at this point, unfortunately. Around 3:30 or so, we went over to the hospital and they let us visit with him while he was still in the ICU in the oxygen kennel. And they told us that, you know, take as much time as you need, really, like, you're not a bother, you're not in the way, just take as much time. So we spent some time with him in there, and every time we've gone to visit him, you know, it just seems like he's so happy to see us. He's like, who are these people? Like, where am I? You know? And they told us that when you're ready, we're gonna take you back to a room, and one of the technicians said, we're gonna put a catheter in his arm, and because we understand how stressed out he can get, we're gonna put it in his arm, and we're gonna place him back in the oxygen just so he can kind of try to calm down a little bit, and then we'll take him into the room. And I just want to say, this part's gonna get harder to talk about, harder to hear about, but, you know, if you have a pet who's sick, or you have a pet in general, I mean, I think it's good to hear about, because this might be eventually something you have to deal with, have to go through. So they took us into the room. It was really nice. It had a huge, long leather couch, and it was nice and dim, not super dark, but just kind of dim. She asked if we wanted to turn the lights up. I said no, dim is fine. She brought us in some paperwork, and basically just saying, you know, you guys will be able to pick out an urn for him, and it comes with a paw print, like a cast paw print, sort of like clay paw print sort of thing. You can choose how many you want, and there's also an option for an ink paw print and an ink nose print. So she stayed in there with us, and we chose one clay paw print, and I also opted to get one ink paw print, so that way I can take it into a tattoo artist and get it tattooed. And then we picked his urn, and I told, you know, after she took the paperwork away and said she would get it all entered in, I told my partner, I was like, I can't believe that I just picked out an urn for him. And he said, I know. And we were just crying crying. And then I asked the technician, you know, is it possible, like, can I hold him while he passes? And they said, of course you can. And after a little while, they brought him into us, and he was wrapped in a blanket, and they tried to kind of put him in my lap, but he was so nervous and scared just with like all these people that he didn't know, like, handling him. He didn't want to stay in my lap. He ended up coming out of my lap and laying on the couch right next to me. And I had brought this. This is his baby blanket. This is his baby blanket that the adoption center had given to us when we first adopted him. So I've always kept it. So he was laying here next to me on the couch, and I put his baby blanket on him, and my partner and I just spent some time petting him and loving on him and talking to him and basically just saying goodbye. And we could take as much time as we wanted, but when we were ready, there was kind of like a doorbell thing we could hit that was inside the room next to the door, and that would just signal the doctor to come in, like, hey, you know, we're ready, come on in. And so when we were ready, my partner went over and hit the doorbell, and I was laying down beside him on the couch, and she came in and she told us, you know, she had explained it before, but she was just kind of talking us through it again, that I'm gonna give him this first shot. And, you know, he had his catheter in, so it had a tube running out of it that she could put the medication into. And she said this first one is gonna kind of relax him. He might fall asleep with it, and he just won't really be aware of his surroundings. And she was like, I'm not gonna start until you're completely ready. And I said, yeah, we're ready. And so she gave him the first shot and kind of gave it a second to work. And she said, okay, at this point, you know, he's no longer aware of his surroundings. And then I'm just laying there with him, and I have my face on him and just crying. And then she gave him the last shot and gave it a second. And she had her stethoscope, and after after 10, 15, whatever seconds, she kind of lifted him up a little bit and was listening for a heartbeat. And then she told us that he'd passed. And then she asked us if she wanted her, she asked if we wanted her to take him right away or if we wanted some more time. And I wanted some more time. So she said, okay, take as much time as you need, and just, you know, hit the doorbell when you're ready. To see him like that was just so hard. To see him, you know, just like lifeless, like he was gone. He'd passed on. And to see him like that, it was just really, really hard. Definitely the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my whole life. After he was gone, I was just like, I just wanted to kick something, you know. I was so upset. We were both crying. We were both crying so hard. It was like it was fucking loud. Like, I really hope no one heard. I just couldn't believe that I was in that situation and that was the outcome and that's what had happened. He's been a constant part of my life for the last 4 years. And I really couldn't believe it. So that's what it was like when he passed. It was very peaceful. They had like this little speaker outside of the door that was playing like ocean sounds. I don't know why, but it was really comforting. It was actually pretty nice. When we were ready, we rang the doorbell and she came in to get him and take him. And right before, when she came in, I was like, you know, this might be a weird question, but could I have some of his fur? And she was like, yeah, of course, you know, that's not weird at all. That happens all the time. People always, you know, that's very common. No worries. And she came back with some scissors and a plastic bag. And she asked me where I wanted his fur from. And I just kind of said his back, you know. He's mostly white, but, you know, he was a flame point Siamese, so he did have some pretty interesting coloring. And so she cut some off of the back for me, and then she like kind of reached for his tail, and she was like, well, you know, what about some of his tail fur? It has really cool coloring. And I was like, yeah, definitely, like for sure. I'm glad that she did that, because, you know, she just kind of did it on her own volition and was like, here, you know, take some from his tail. It's really cool coloring. And so I have that. I have, you know, one small piece of him at least before we get his ashes. And yeah, then she wrapped him up in a blanket and took him away. And me and my partner spent just a little bit more time in the room trying to recover a little bit. And then we went home, and like, that was the hardest decision I've ever had to make, and it was the hardest experience I've ever gone through. But that night after, you know, we were home, it was just, God, it was so shitty, like, being here without him. And seeing all his stuff, you know, his food and his water and his toys everywhere. I'm just not ready to touch any of them yet. And I already told my partner, I was like, I'm not throwing any of it away. I'm not throwing away his toys, his water bowl, his food bowl, none of it. Like, and he understands. He doesn't care if I want to keep it, you know. How are you supposed to like bring yourself to throw something like that away, even if you know they're never gonna use it again? It's like, I really just can't. It's hard enough to even look at it. Like, I can't touch it right now. I really can't touch it. I wanted to make this video to honor his memory, because he really was such an amazing cat. I'll never ever meet another cat like him. I think that him and I were meant to be together. He was always meant to be my baby, and I was always meant to be his mom. We fit so well together. He was like, you know, like my little soulmate, you know. And this whole experience was so sudden and so unexpected, and I'm just trying to deal with the grief and the gravity of it. It's sitting on me like 1,000 tons. That's how heavy it feels. And one of the worst parts of the whole experience is just like the denial that I feel. And I'm sure a lot of people feel when they lose a pet. You know, they're a part of your family. They become such a huge part of your life. Just the denial is really hard to deal with. Of just like, I cannot believe that this has happened. He's everything to me, and I just can't believe that this is how it went, and this is what happened, and this is now the reality that I'm dealing with. It feels like a nightmare that I can't wake up from. I feel like there's a space in my heart that will forever be empty without him. You know, even if I were to get another pet in the future, there's always gonna be that space that's empty because he's not here. He was my baby, my little son, my best friend. And I love him so much, and I miss him. I miss him so much already. I wanted to make this video to honor his memory and to help me heal. And whoever sees this, maybe you're dealing with a sick pet or have lost a pet. Maybe this might help you. I know some parts of it are hard to listen to, and I did leave out some details, especially concerning his passing and everything, that would have just been too hard to talk about. But if this video helps you in any way, I'm really glad that it did. I don't know what else I can say, really. It's just so horribly sad, and this is, you know, I lost him yesterday, so I'm still kind of dealing with it and processing everything. But anyway, if this video helped you in any way, I'm glad that it did. I'm gonna go ahead and go now. Just thank you for listening to his story, and I'm gonna put some videos here at the end of him and kind of show you a little bit of what his personality was like. So thank you so much, and give your animals some love for me. Your dad gave him a ball, and now he has ball. Hi, chicken. Little man. Wow. Hello. Hi, chicken. Wow. Hi. Beautiful. Oh, what a good boy.